Hey all, we're back today just for another quick deviation from the joy of soldering. So today I've got another soldering project, but it's not another effect or something like that. I've just got to quickly repair the input jack for my bass guitar. This thing has been coming loose for years, and I've always just adjusted the metal to kind of make the contact a little bit more secure, but it keeps getting worse and I need to replace it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to just test really quickly with a TRRS cable to see where the connections go, because this bass actually has stereo output. So we're going to check with that to make sure that we get all the connections right when we install the new jack. And we're going to install a little bit of a fancier barrel jack just to make sure we can get the right depth, and it should be a little bit stronger than the one that was in there before. So this is the bass we'll be working on today. It is not a Rickenbacker. And this switch here is basically what swaps us between stereo output. I've never actually used the stereo function on this bass before, so normally that acts as a kill switch for me when playing live, but we still need to replace the jack. And this thing, yeah, it's kind of my studio bass, I guess, because it sounds super good, but this neck joint here has completely come away, and so we had to add this bolt-on plate. So I won't use this live anymore, just in case the neck falls off. But as you can see, the socket's fallen in as well, so let's just unscrew that and we'll take a look inside. So I bought this bass probably around 10 years ago now. This was the first proper bass guitar I ever owned. I'd bought a few second-hand ones, but this was the first I'd ever owned from new. And this became the bass that I gigged with up until I moved to university. I still use it, I've still gigged with it, but I just feel a little bit unsafe taking it out of the house now. Just with the state of that neck. I could do with setting it up again because the action is crazy high. I always thought that that was something I preferred on my basses, but I think realistically I should get something a little nicer out of this bass anyway. So let's just lift this out of the way. As you can see, we've absolutely coated the inside with glue here just to try and make that neck joint a little better. So here is the offending article, our output jack. And just through the inside here, you won't be able to see, but there are just little points of contact, and those have just come loose over time. So what we're going to do, we're going to keep our locking washers, and from the new jack we'll just mount straight through. I've just done a little work on the multimeter. As you can see, I plugged the jack straight into this cable, which comes out at a TRRS here. So by holding these together I can check the contacts, and I know that the stem is our ground, the red cable is our tip, and the white cable underneath is our ring. So I've just noted that down so that I have that for later. And I really should put something under the neck to stop it from jumping around. But now that that's out of the way with, I can confidently replace this new jack once I've tested which goes to which in there to make sure I've got that right. I discovered something a little unfortunate, that this mounting plate doesn't fit for our socket. See? So I'm just going to clip this in the vise and widen it out. So now we've got this new part all mounted in. I said that we were going to keep these locking washers, but actually they won't fit around this, but that's fine because we've got a little rubber washer. This is going to stay tight even if we're just using a nut on the underside. Now, one thing that I did say as well is I mentioned that I used to use this as a kill switch, and now we've got the circuit open, we can have a look at what exactly is going on in there and why that works as a kill switch, and what the intention is if we're using a stereo jack. Now, I bought this as a stereo socket, but one thing that I notice is that there are 4 output lugs on here. So, how can I check what's going on? I think that this big output lug was also going to be connected to the ground, because if I bought it as a stereo connector, there should only be 3 outputs. But again, multimeter, that's how we can check. So all I'll do is connect one lug here to this, and then I will touch that against the other ones and see if anything moves on the multimeter. Surprisingly, no. But that doesn't matter. We can still use this just as a standard TRRS connector. So what I'll do is I'll plug in this cable. Perfect. And we'll see that when I do touch this now to another connector, one will move. That's because the TRRS cable is naturally, I don't know if that's the right word, the TRRS cable will bridge 2 of these connectors, which is this smallest one on the outside. So these 2 are basically going to act as our ground. So when it comes to soldering, we'll ignore this smallest one here, and we'll just use the thicker output one as our ground, because that's going to be most obvious to us. So let's then take the other end of our TRRS cable and see which one is connected to the tip. I imagine it's going to be the tallest, but we'll see. So we can see our thick lug on the end here is what's connected to the ground. Cool. The ring, this seems to be connected to this tallest one. And the tip is the shortest, which means that the middle one is going to be our ground. So I'm just going to note down here, tallest is equal to ring, and shortest is equal to the tip. So the middle / outer equals ground. And actually this is helpful because if we decide to take this out later, we've not already got solder on the middle lug. But now let's take a look at the switch and see how that's acting as a kill switch in mono or as a multiple output in stereo. It's a little tricky to see because I can't move the control plate too far. I'll use my screwdriver just to tap on here. So we've got this switch, which is a single push double throw, I think. Basically you've got the center lug which will either be connected to one of the outers depending on where the switch is. And we can see here that the center lug is connected to the white cable. And the white cable here is what's going to the ring of our stereo jack output, which would in normal cases be the right side of your stereo. And the red wire here is connected to this top, which is connected to the tip, which is like the normal output from a guitar jack. So just, the tip section of it. But this red wire here is connected in 2 places. So it's connected to that output, but it's also connected all the way up here to the output of our switch. So I don't think this is like a Rickenbacker stereo thing, because I think in Rickenbacker stereo each pickup goes to a different output, whereas with this you've just got whatever position your pickup is in which goes to the output. Okay, so the reason why this works as a kill switch in mono is basically that this white cable here is supposed to be connected to the ring. But if you're using a mono cable, you don't have that connection to the ring. That is actually a ground connection. So if I flip this switch and this white cable is connected to nothing, that's fine, that's just a ground. But if I flip this switch, which means that these two are connected, the path of least resistance for your signal is to go down this white cable into the ring output. But when you have a mono cable in, that's shorted to this ground output here. So essentially, what I'm doing by making that a kill switch when using mono is I'm just providing a short circuit for the signal to go to the ground. And that's how it works. But if I've got that stereo connection, which if I plug my cable in here, and I've got my multimeter, the white and the red, the white and the red aren't connected right now. But if I flip this switch, they are. But what we'll notice is the white and red aren't connected to ground with this cable. Whereas if I use a standard guitar cable, we'll see that as we test these, this red tip will have a short to our ground. Yep, and my multimeter's just gone. So that's how that works as a kill switch, is we're essentially just sending all of the signal to ground so nothing gets to our amplifier. Here we go. So to start, I'm just going to desolder the old cable. Just hold the red in place and melt the solder that's already there. That's straight away gone. Same with the white. And now with the ground, this will be a little bit more difficult because it's a bigger connection. But if we just keep getting that hot, there we go. Dead easy. But this part is just going to go in the bin because it's really worn, it's seen better days, and it's not going to be reliable if I put it in anything else. So now, the new connector. So first off, I'm just going to tin this up. This is just off to the edge here. So as I've noted down, we need the outer lug for our ground. Now some of you may notice that I'm not really protecting my bass while I'm doing this. This is because there is enough scratches on this thing anyway, and it's mine. So I'm not really so bothered if anything happens. A little bit of solder isn't going to ruin this finish any more than it already is. This bass is not aesthetically precious to me. Let's put it that way. So this is this connection. This is all tinned. Awesome. So let's just connect our cable. But before I do that, I'm going to make sure that I actually put this into the bass guitar, because of the way that it's mounted, this needs to be in place and then soldered up. But now the problem is finding the two long screws with which we're supposed to do this. They were underneath the camera. Okay. So that's mounted in place, but this is going to now be a little bit awkward to solder. But that's fine. There's not really any give on this. But again, that's just how it is. So we're going to get right up close. Get a bit of extra solder on there just to secure the joint, because This really isn't going well. And the best way would be if I could get my helping hands in there, but it doesn't look like I'll be particularly able to. I think one of the reasons this isn't staying is because I'm unable to hold it while it dries. Yeah, I've totally split that. So, easy enough. What we'll do, we'll just cut a new end and just do this fresh. And it's good that we've screwed it up at the start, because if we'd have screwed this up while the white one was in place, that would make it so much more difficult. But one thing to note here is, fortunately, our wire is too thin for the shortest section on our wire stripper. So, there we go. This is to be super delicate and manually do a new end with the sort of scissor section, which is super tough. But we did it. So let's tin that end up again. Okay, so that is connected. Finally. The white one we should just be able to get on because it is a much easier angle, at least for right-handed me. I think if I were just as able with my left and my right, this wouldn't have been a problem. But alas, I am not. So who'd have thought making 3 solder joints would have taken so long? Honestly, I kinda did. I'm not so great at doing this. But here we go. This is what we're doing today. And I guess what's more important is getting it done rather than being the best, right? That's why we say building badly better. But, here we go. Let's see if we're connected. The one I'm concerned about is the right connection, so I'm just going to check that first. So that'll be the connection from our switch here. Perfect. And the white, also connected. Most importantly, the ground is also done. So there we go. One bass guitar with a replaced jack. A small explanation as to what's going on with our stereo switch. And now we can put it back together. And hope that this new jack doesn't interfere with the old electronics. It's a bit of a tight squeeze, but I think we're good. So I've just got this plugged into my guitar amp to test. So here we are on the neck pickup. Middle. And bridge. And this is the on position. So let me just flip the switch down and you'll see no output, which means our stereo mode is working, more or less. So I don't have the right cables to test that the stereo works properly today, but actually because I run my bass most of the time in mono, I don't really care. The new output jack's great, it's really solid, and it works. So If it works for mono, I'm just going to guess that the stereo is fine, because this wasn't a particularly complicated electronics thing. When I'm next around a Y cable, I'll let you know if it works in stereo, but I don't have one in the studio, so I'm going to call this job done.